All right. Evening, everybody. It is 6:30, and we should call our meeting to order by starting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Back to our right. There it is. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okie dokie. Do we have any amendments to this evening's agenda?
We do not.
Hooray. Then we should keep on going. Let's move into item 3, which is public comment. And while I do see some people that are members of the public, they also happen to be students and one of our guests for this evening. So I doubt that anybody has public comment. Is that true? Okay, then we shall move along.
Question.
Yes.
When somebody emails in under the public comment, are we supposed to be reading those as a public comment at our meetings?
They get added in as communication.
Okay, so they're not actually spoken publicly.
Right.
And one question on amendments to the agenda. We had talked about a DC trip. Is that potentially?
We're not ready to
have any?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Yes?
To Angela's point, because I think it was advertised, if you have a public comment, you should email it. So if the way we're doing, we should just make sure it's clear for everybody out there.
It can be the will of the board how you want to handle that. Anything said in public comment or communications are subject to the right to know. Mm-hmm. The name and topic gets listed within either under public comment or communications, but we can handle it however you'd like to.
Any thoughts on this?
I think if they're sending it as a public comment versus to us as a board, I think that traditionally when they send it to us as a board to our board emails individually, that's kind of understood that, hey, I'm reaching out to you. But I think if you're sending it to public comment, I got that question about why wasn't my comment, read, because especially last time where some people were uncomfortable coming to the setting, they were trying to speak without physically being here. So that's how I think we should handle it, is if you're sending it to public comment, that it is publicly read.
So just a point of clarification, who would read it, and would they read everything that was written, no matter the public comment? Because we have time limits and everything within public comment when people are here in person. So just logistically, how do we deal with that?
Probably going with the same rules, where if it's, if somebody sends a, manifesto that when you hit your whatever, in the case of last time with 3 minutes, if you hit the 3-minute mark, all right, your time is up. We'll still get the communication, but.
Let me ask it does, and I'm just curious, the communications that are sent and submitted as public comment, where do they wind up living in a long-term sense?
We have them with Meredith keeps them. We have them on file in the office, and so somebody there subject to right to know. Understood. If somebody wanted them, they could access them.
So we're sort of focused on the modality of how we would share them, i.e. reading them out loud, whereas I think if there's an expectation that public comments are shared publicly, would it be possible for us to share those communications by hosting them or posting them along with the minutes on the web as well as an alternative?
It is definitely possible. I caution a little about having it be within your minutes, because your minutes are yours, and so you give up some control of your minutes by letting whatever is in public comment.
Even if, I shouldn't say then with the minutes, but I think, in a similar fashion to the minutes, I suppose, if that would be advisable. And I'm saying that to Jackie, I really should be looking at the members of the board to see if that's, a consensus building sort of, option there.
I guess I would say that if somebody submits a comment via an email, I say we read it, and if you get to that 2 or 3 minute mark, then you stop reading it. It's available for us to see as board members. I'm not sure that it has to be, I think having it available with Meredith is wise, but I don't know that it needs to get special treatment, because the folks who come and speak, what they put out in the stratosphere for everybody to hear, it's here, now it's recorded because we're recording the meeting, but that's as much play as that got. So I feel like if somebody submits it in writing and then we give it additional, like, oh, it's going to be attached to a board packet, that feels like that's more weight than other comments. I just want to see some sort of equality in what's being done. But I do feel like if they submit it, we should read it, barring any sort of foul language or something like that. But we should read it as best as we could, and then let that be that for that meeting.
That sounds fair.
And who's we, one of the board members?
So, yeah, whomever.
Okay.
Like a board member.
Because that was her,
Right.
part of her question was who's
Thank you.
Who's
Yeah,
responsible for that?
Maybe we just nominate the board chair.
Does the board chair have a say in it? All right, so I have one email, I think, that is the one in concern. Is it the one from Ms. Bowden that is the one of reading, or?
I think the actual public comment ones get emailed to a separate email.
Yeah.
That-
Yeah, so I think what we're talking about are ones that are specifically emailed to public comment,
Those are different.
which are different than ones that are just emailed to us as board members.
Right, understood. In fact, I don't know that we then even get the emails for the public comment ones.
Meredith receives those.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Angela and Deb. I mean, I think that whether it's in person here or whether it's submitted, we should treat them equitably. And so they should be read aloud here, but I don't think there's a need to post them anywhere.
Okay.
All
right. So then why don't we do this? The ones that have been submitted to public comment, we're not going to scramble to try and track them down right this very second. Oh, you only have one and it has not come to the public comment email. Okay. Okay.
And so if that's the case, we'd also need it to come with some notice before the meeting.
Understood.
To guarantee that it's going to make public comment.
Okay. Yep, understood. So just so that we're clear then, there is, at present, we have not received an email at the public comment at email address. So everything we've been talking about, if there was an expectation that it would be read as public comment, it was not submitted through the proper channels. Okay. Maybe as a secondary sort of consolation to this is that if it has been emailed to the administration or it has been emailed to one of the board members or multiples of the board members, then we have seen it. We have read it. But if it is intended to be read at public comment, then it should be sent to the public comment, at just because that's the clearest way for that to happen. I'm actually presently unaware of anybody wishing to have had their things read at public comment, and contextually it doesn't say anything about that in these emails that I have here. So does everybody sort of agree with that then? Okay.
And just one point of clarification, if it comes to administrators, like, I don't pass those along.
I understand, yeah.
You don't want them.
No, I totally understand. Yep. I totally understand. I'm sure they're only saying nice things about us. That's to be honest. Yeah. Okay, got it. So everybody cool with that then? Yeah. So then let's move along. We're on item 4, which with regard to the minutes. So I will take any motions pertaining to that.
I'll move that we adopt the minutes of August 26th, 2021 school board meeting.
Okay. Anybody wish to second Deb's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further conversation, discussion? All right. Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the minutes dated August 26th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let's move on to item 5, which is communications. And so since our last meeting, which was here and sort of resulted in the disposition we took on masks, I know I have received a couple handfuls of different emails, which I think many of you have also received. My intention, again, wasn't to read them here, but sort of just to say that the sentiment shared in those emails was very much in favor of instituting masks in school. There were a couple of other emails that I had received that said, please don't you dare put masks back in place in schools. But I will also say that the volume of those has dropped considerably in the recent days, last week or two. Anybody ever have any other communications that they wish to share or discuss?
I
Is there any different than
forwarded
that?
a few of them to, I copied Zach and Jackie and Irene, just because they were only at least obviously addressed to me, so I don't know if they were like blind CC'd other people, but because I didn't know if everybody got them, just so they're in the file or whatever.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, these are the ones that that I had sort of seen first time around, so cool. Okay, let's not dwell on this then, and let's keep on moving then. And oh no, I've moved my. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the peer leaders, right? Yeah. Oh golly, I have changed the tab that I was on here, guys, so I've now lost it. There it is right there. All right, cool. Yes, so item 6 is persons scheduled to appear before the board. And so the first item here is peer leadership. Should we look there or should we look there? Or should we look at both places? Okay. This is going to be very awkward for all of us, I'm just saying.
Don't worry about us.
It's all good, you guys.
Can we go into the audience for this?
You could.
We could. You guys want to just turn around and present to us at the tables there so we can see what's going on behind you?
We can move.
We can move.
If you want.
Sure, let's do it.
We'll move.
Go for it. Let's hear it.
Hi, everybody. For anyone who doesn't know me at this point, my name is Bella, going from West Coast Eddie, Emma, and Alexis. And with you on behalf of the Peer Leadership class, we're here to talk about the purpose and goals of the Peer Leadership program at Johnstown. We will recap what was done in 2020, 2021, and talk about what's going on so far in 2021 and looking forward to 2022. Some goals of the program include making every ninth grader at Johnstown feel connected to a peer leader. Peer leaders will promote a healthy and safe school culture at Johnstown. Also, the program will empower current and future peer leaders to take ownership of their Johnstown community and their culture.
Throughout the school year, peer leaders should have lessons to improve their leadership skills. These lessons should challenge students to get out of their comfort zones. These lessons are student-driven and judgment-free. Some of these leadership modules include leadership voice, integrity, communication, and difficult dialogue, and then several more as listed above.
So peer leadership television was an activity that we started last year due to the pandemic. These were videos that were shown to the freshmen. They were videos shown to the freshmen that acted as mini lessons due to the fact that we could not be face-to-face with them. And then most of them were topics regarding the University of High School. Students would write, film, and produce videos that freshmen, and they would make a type of voice that face-to-face. Students had to communicate with community expert or who were done by their students. Some of these topics included how to stay organized, course selection, and even transition to their sophomore year, and as well as their about residency. Each group of peer leaders took on one topic which was what they thought were the most important aspects and acted as directors for these videos. These are 4 videos that we made. I don't know if they're with you currently, but if you want to watch anything, feel free to let us know.
the top row is us doing our positive payment out in the courtyard when you first walk in, and then the bottom row is all of Valentine's Day hearts on the school lockers and walls. And then that is our video of all of our packs. Which we can also be on if you guys want. So our 8th grade movement night also got to move to a virtual event because of COVID. So 2 of our senior peer leaders did film and produce a video with the director of the pathways last year, which she helped us kind of send out to all the freshmen and all the freshmen.
And give us the video, and maybe some of the friends that I you guys have been watching, let us know.
We next have some quotes from second year peer leaders. First is a quote from senior peer leader Katie Montgomery about the classroom dynamics of last year in the pandemic. This is not a typical year, as many of you know, and the way we came close this year was by making videos together as a class. This resulted in many laughs together. I'm sorry. We did many discussions that we considered difficult conversations that allowed us to be open to what others were saying in a non-judgmental way. Something here we participated in many icebreakers and helped us get to know one another on a better and more personal level.
And here's a quote that I had written last year. I was an in-person student the first semester and then stayed home the second semester, so I felt like it was like a good idea for me to write a quote on how I thought everything went for me. So COVID-19 made it difficult for communication between teachers and students and with one another, but in peer leadership, we kept ourselves close with each other, participating in icebreakers, breaking up PLTV, and checking on each other throughout the year. The classroom was very different, not being able to be physically close with one another, and we know how draining that can be. We as a class still pushed to keep close and make sure the freshmen felt as comfortable as possible. The year was difficult for everyone, but we succeeded and did it together. Since we pushed it that year, we were eager and we're ready. Then everybody gets started on our next year, we'll be back to moving for all. I'm still kind of incredibly.
So moving forward to the rest of this year and 2020, small groups of communities have already been established, and with these small groups, we've actually already facilitated one meeting in freshman advisories. Some of the topics that we discussed in these freshman advisories include organization, values, using your voice, and conflict management, and then several more.
We thank you for your time today. We now open the floor to any questions that you may have. Anything that you want to know about?
So we've been in this pandemic situation for longer than just even last school year. So have all of you been doing peer leadership things since prior to the pandemic as well? Any of you, or have you only done this in the pandemic sense?
So the program is a junior and senior class only. So I went in it. Me and Abby are both returners, so this is our second year, and these are their first years. So we were in it during the pandemic. We didn't get the experience before the pandemic.
Okay, so that's sort of like level set. So you guys only experienced this role, this job, this experience with the pandemic in mind, and as we're coming out of this, arguably coming out of this, okay, right? And so looking at you guys who have not done this before, okay, right, like how do you want to see this structured? You don't have a prior year's sort of group to go on what's sort of normal for this sort of thing. So like, what does it look like now that we're moving in this direction? What are you hopeful for as we move ahead?
I mean, personally, I'm just hopeful that we will get to stay meeting with our freshman monthly. I mean, I was in this program last year when I wasn't available to us, but I went to one meeting with them and I really enjoyed it already. So I'm really hoping that they continue doing what they're doing. Obviously, there's always, it can always go up, but it can always go down as well. Right now, I'm happy that we did this with our freshman. We didn't focus on it. So I kind of hope that they somehow stay where we're at, or only get them. Also going off of Bell, like I know my freshman year,
guys get questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, I love the fact. Thank you very much. Awesome. I was curious, how many peer leaders are there? Our class size?
22.
And another thing I'd just be totally curious about, so I'm at the college, and the college also has a peer leader program. And there might be some really interesting opportunities there. I can just imagine the peer leaders here getting together with peer leaders in the college to be able to sort of exchange, how they go about doing it. There might be some really interesting opportunities.
I know that we want students to go either to athletics, and I first heard like, oh, we have leaders, and I'm like, in the head, and I thought that was like a non-starter. So they closed that community college places did it. And I would like, because you know, community college is different, like you choose to go there because they know that you don't choose to come here every day. But it's very different.
But you don't choose.
I think it'd be very neat to see what they do and hear people that didn't hear that.
Well, I mean, to go off of what Zach was asking you, right? I mean, you're coming into this not having had the experience of the pre-pandemic things, and in a sense, you kind of can mold it into be what you want it to be. And so, you really have opportunities.
So you all had pre-pandemic experience as a freshman and a sophomore, meeting with peer leaders and things like that. So at least there's that. We were able to see what they enjoyed doing. My daughter was a peer leader and really enjoyed it. And same thing at college. She has somebody that she meets with that sort of guides her as she goes along and stuff that meets with a bunch of the freshmen in college. And I love that we start that here. And I remember hearing from my daughter how much she enjoyed it as a freshman, even just like some silly things like homecoming dance was coming. What sort of clothes are you going to wear for it? Like things that freshmen might feel a little bit lost, makes them feel more connected and stuff. So echoing what he said, I really appreciate.
If you remember, 2 years ago, the peer leadership program was going to go to UNH to be facilitators of that student forum. That's before any of these kids were involved. Unfortunately, with everything that got canceled, I'm hoping that comes back because the peer leaders at the time are going to be in charge of that. And I have to say is that Ms. McGyver, our peer leadership instructor, has really taken this and done a great job. I just applaud her and all her efforts along with the students. But it really just solidifies why we're in the business to help kids like that and then for them to pass that on to the youngest. So I appreciate everything that Ms. McGyver and the students do to bring this program to a different level. I really appreciate it. Take your seats. Thank you very much.
Whew. Okay, the second item we have under item 6 is we have a visitor with us, Senator Whitley, who I believe you have a sort of like a short sort of presentation you'd like to make, and then I think it's opening the floor to questions. Yes? Okay, super.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I don't have a PowerPoint like these amazing teenagers. I'm so impressed from my business school background. I love those PowerPoints. So that was amazing, and that's of course like why we do all of that, right? To hear that, so impressive. You clearly have very impressive students at this school. So kudos. So my name's Becky Whitley. I am the senator from District 15. And so the way that we set up our Senate districts are a little strange. So I represent Concord, Henniker, Hopkinton, and Warner. So what I'm doing in this off period when we're not in session is just trying to meet with as many communities as possible. I was in Henniker and saw some folks over there. So some of this information will be redundant, and I apologize for that. So this is my first year in the Senate, but I spent my career in public service with a focus on children. I was a disability rights lawyer for many years, represented children with disabilities, families with family members, and adults with disabilities. And then I did some community organizing around environmental issues focused on those that impact children's health. And then right before I served in the Senate, I did policy work trying to look about how to support our most vulnerable children and families. So you can see sort of where I come to this space, a deep love for children and, a deep understanding that they are the future of our state, and they're also just my favorite people. And of course, when we support children, we have to support families. And so that you'll hear that in a lot of the work that I do in the Senate. So I serve on the Senate Health and Human Services Committee and the Judiciary Committee. So any issue that relates to healthcare or anything that goes to the Department of Health and Human Services goes through that committee. And then Judiciary is a whole other ballgame. We see it's a very busy committee. We see criminal justice reform. We see gun reform. We'll see abortion bills. So it's a very busy committee, and we get a lot of hot button issues. So I'm happy to hear from community members and from board members on any bill that impacts, particularly for this board, any bill that impacts public education, but I'm not on education. But certainly a lot of these issues are really related. So I also serve on JALCAR, which is the Joint Legislative Commission on Administrative Regulations. And I sort of like to kid that that's where they put freshman senators, because it's kind of the most boring committee, but it's also it's a very important committee to the state because that's where all the regulations that implement our law go through. And it's really important. That's where the sausage is made, where we make sure everything's in there to protect Granite Staters. And as a lawyer, that's real wonky space that I'm into. But we also get a chance to really get into the meat of a lot of issues. So for example, I'm not on education, but I did get to see the rules on the new voucher program. And so I have an understanding of it through that. So what I'd like to do, I'd love to just give you a quick summary about what happened this year in the budget related to public education. And I'm happy to take any questions related to last session or the budget or me. And then I'd love to hear if there are any issues that you folks as community leaders would like me to be aware of, things to bring to the Senate this session, issues that you're aware of that will be coming to the Senate that you would like me to hear about. So hopefully this is more of a two-way conversation. Does that work? Okay, great. So as folks may know, in New Hampshire, we do our budget every 2 years. So this past session that ended in June was a budget year. And unfortunately, in the end, I did not feel comfortable supporting the budget that was eventually passed and was signed by the governor. And in large part, it's because I think it really fell short of meeting the school funding needs. You folks know very well that we have a complex school funding system in New Hampshire, and study after study has shown that we really just don't, at a state level, fund our public schools in a way that's equitable for all families, not equitable for children and not equitable for property taxpayers. So this year I thought would be an effort, a real opportunity to take a look at our public education funding system. Even though we were coming out of the pandemic, our revenues were strong as a state, but unfortunately, we just fell short, I think. I mean, you folks know that the school districts on average spend close to $17,000 per student, but the state funding formula continues to set the cost of an education at roughly $4,700 per student. So that delta, of course, has to be made up by local property taxpayers. So you also may know that we in New Hampshire at the state level provide a very little amount of funding. We're like 48th out of 50 in the state level funding. So it's a big problem and something that, I feel deeply about. I believe in the importance of public education and that all our children should start out on the same foot. So there was some good that happened in the budget. This board may have talked about the fact that pre-pandemic student counts were off, right, because of the pandemic, and so we had to sort of fix that issue related to calculating school aid for this year. We're going to have to do it again for next year because it's likely, and you folks may know better, it's likely that counts continue to stay low with all the uncertainty. We didn't do enough in this budget for school building aid. There's a lot of work that has to be done there. And then there was some shifting in how we give targeted state aid. The last biennium, we had a very targeted state aid, which grants just went right to the schools. It's a little different this year, and personally, I don't think it was as targeted as it could have been. And so, I think that there was also a reduction in SWEPT, and I think that cut in SWEPT was very poorly timed and not a very targeted use of state resources. I think extending fiscal capacity disparity aid like we did 2 years ago would have delivered the funds more quickly and more effectively. I also briefly mentioned that the budget contained a very sweeping school voucher bill that will divert funding from public education to private religious and homeschool programs through education freedom accounts. And we still don't know how much that is actually going to cost. The reality is that bill did not pass the full legislature. It died in the House, and then the Senate version was put in the budget. And there was never a real fiscal analysis about how many families would take advantage of this and how much it will cost. We're seeing a very high interest in the program, and so the cost just keeps upticking. So we've yet to see how much that's really going to cost. The rules did go through JALCAR. I voted against them because it was rushed. It didn't have the appropriate protections for student privacy, for non-discrimination provisions, but it did go through. We did not have the votes to stop that. And so I will stop there. I mean, there are a number of issues in the budget that impact communities, but I just did want to specifically talk about public education, unless there was another issue that the board was interested in talking about. So happy to take questions.
So So Deb and I have already had the pleasure of a conversation with the senator here. So before either one of us sort of ask any questions, I'd be happy to see if any of you guys have got questions for her.
First, I usually steal your question. So on the adequacy thing, I know that's obviously been a hot topic for decades in our state. Like, where do we see that going? I mean, I know there was the one trial, and then is it at another level now? But even then, it's got to be at the legislator level where they reassess. Is that correct?
So there's been, decades and decades of litigation on this issue. There is a series of the Claremont litigation, that really just established the right to an adequate education, but it didn't actually set the amount of what that is. That was really left to the legislature, and because the legislature, frankly, didn't do there's been another lawsuit. So there is ongoing litigation with school districts about to set what it means to, what the actual number is for adequacy, but it's not settled at all. Will the court punt it back to the legislature? I don't know. It's an open question. Do I think that this last budget that was passed came anywhere close to adequacy? No.
Because that's one of the things that I think we see, every budget cycle. It's like,
that's right.
When we have to go to the taxpayers and
that's right.
In the community, and even we have two towns, so Ware and Henniker pay different amounts because of the percentages in the town and just all the different calculations, but it's a hard sell.
That's right. And, I have to tell you, so I'm new in office. I've now been in office for a year. The previous year, I spent the entire year talking to voters. And the number one thing that people brought to me was property taxes and the connection to public education. Like, it is just what everyone is talking about. Regardless if you have a child in the school system, my mom is retired. I live in Hopkinton. And so she feels it deeply, right, as now a fixed income. So it's just an issue that everyone cares about across the board. And I feel like we have an obligation to fix it, to make sure that we're funding it equitably. And, it shouldn't be that if a kiddo lives in one town, they get a much better education than they do in another town based on property values. It's just not equitable.
You good?
Did I take your question?
I think I'm good.
You good?
Oh, yeah.
All right, Bella.
So I'm going to ask kind of just like a personal question about you, like a student question. You were saying that you had a business background. I am a senior. I'm going to be majoring in sport management next year in college, so definitely in the business realm. I was just interested how you got into politics from originally studying in business. I always think it's interesting to hear people's backstories on how they switch careers, and I definitely think that's a very interesting one.
Yeah, that's a great question. I asked myself too, how did I end up in politics? So I went to business school. I went to the George Washington Business School. I got a degree in international business and human resources. And then actually my senior year of, this is interesting you asked this, Bella. My senior year of college was 9/11. So that was sort of a dramatic life change for so many. I'm sure folks on the board remember where they were that day. And I realized, I actually didn't want to go into business. I wanted to go into public service. And so I worked for a big law firm for a couple years, and then I went to law school knowing that I wanted to go into public service. So sometimes lawyers work for firms, they represent people, but many lawyers go into public service where they work in government or they work for government. So I knew that that's what I wanted to do. So right out of law school, I worked, it was basically like a legal aid service for people with disabilities, and was able to, through representing individuals, saw some of the system deficiencies in how we provide health care. So felt like, I really wanted to approach tackling these system issues from a different way rather than litigation. I mean, sometimes when a lawyer walks in the room, it's very contentious, and I, felt like I wanted to solve problems in a different way. And then, frankly, life happens. I became a mom, and I wanted to be home with my son a little more. And practicing law is an unrelenting schedule. It's tough. It's tough to, have control of your schedule. So that's actually where my career took a turn. And Bella, that's where different opportunities opened up. I realized that I could use my law degree for different things, and I did, and I used it to make change on a lot of issues that I care deeply about. And so, it's important to remember that, you may get one degree, go one direction, but, you have to sort of listen to what you care deeply about, and you can use your education in that direction. So thanks for that question. Love that.
That's really interesting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Jill, do you have any questions, Jill, before I?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think.
Anything?
So last time that I saw you, we talked a little bit about really trying to advocate for kids in our state who need extraordinary care.
Right.
So I continue to be on the hunt for some extraordinary care for my own child. Yeah. And so one thing that we're lacking is residential care that we kind of understand is going to last for a long time. Mm-hmm. Lots of kids, they might need that residential care, and they're going to make some improvements. They're going to come home. Sometimes there's kids who are going to be in that care, and that's where they're going to be. And we do not have that here in our state. And I know that there is some move afoot to potentially bring that here. Mm-hmm. I keep hearing about, there's maybe going to be 26 beds, but it's more of an acute psychiatric mm-hmm. type thing. That is not what I'm talking about.
Yep.
What's going on with that? And I just sort of heard through our psychiatry team that some of the people that we were talking to at the state about this, all of a sudden are not in their positions anymore. Yeah. And that is super frustrating for those of us in my position, because it's hard to find somebody to talk to.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you can always come to ask me, and I can go, I want to offer that to everyone. I can be a conduit for finding information from the state or whoever, and certainly anyone could reach out to me, and I can help connect to get information. But you're right. So Erica Ungarelli, who runs the Children's Behavioral Health Bureau, has left the state. She was an integral part of expanding the system of care for children with very complex needs. So that is a real loss. But she has created a legacy and a framework that I'm confident will continue. That's also a priority of mine, and so something that I will never stop working on. The residential issue that you raised is a real one. We have acute care for children, inpatient psychiatric. We have some community-based services, but we have nothing in between. So that's a huge hole, certainly something that many folks recognize. So there is exciting work, though, actually being done with integrating the needs for children behavioral health needs with the work that's going on with DCYF. So typically DCYF is something like it only gets involved when there's abuse and neglect, but there's a recognition that there's so many things that we can do to support children and families before a crisis occurs. And so they're able to access federal dollars in a new way if they're calling it the residential redesign. But basically, but the idea is...
No great fan of that organization. And I spend a lot of time in litigation with these folks in different situations. And if you're going to ever get community buy-in from those of us who have children with disabilities to ever work in any cooperative way with that organization, it's probably going to take some medication on my part, because it ain't never happening. I don't trust them, and I can spend a lot of time outside of this realm telling you why. And we need to address that, because if you want families to work with that organization...
You're talking about DCYF?
Oh, yeah. It cannot be the way it looks right now. And I'll look in the camera and say that. I'm going to shout that from the rooftops. It has been a very difficult, disgusting thing to deal with. So my tolerance to deal with them is pretty much zero. So while that may be out there and exciting, in my family, that ain't never happening. So, just so you know. That's where I come from.
Yeah, no, and I hear that. I hear that from other families. What I do see is a commitment to filling that gap that you've identified. I see that commitment. We have a lot of work to go. We also have a partner in the Child Advocate. We have a newer position, the Office of Child Advocate. She's expanded her authority. She cares deeply about getting children the right services at the right time at the right place. And so there's a lot of work to be done, though, Deb, and I know you understand that deeply. And it can never go fast enough. To me, I wanted that reform done 10 years ago, and system reform takes a long time, and I'm impatient because I hear from families that they need the services, and they needed it years ago.
There's no substitute for residential care, and I think that's the issue that while we can say that we're going to do all of these things that are inside of a home, sometimes the students in our districts need that kind of service. We're going to have to fill that gap somehow. And there's a cost, there's a cost in the education for these kids who need that. There's a cost to the family, and it's not just a financial cost. It's just there's a toll on each family who's waiting for that sort of service. I think there's an opportunity lost, because a lot of times in our districts we're looking out of state, and so that is, there's a lot of reasons why that's not really a good plan. So anyway,
we have a lot of children out of state.
We have a lot of kiddos out of state, and to me that just feels so difficult for families if they could access on a daily basis. If it's somebody who doesn't need a residential, I've got people in our circle who their child is driven down across the border to Massachusetts on a daily basis. That's a long ride for a kiddo. That's a really long ride for a kiddo. I'm not sure that is what's best either, So I'm the one jumping up and down screaming about what are we going to do for these kids.
And that's the only way that change is made.
That's the way it is.
That's how change gets made.
No, we appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate the things that you're working on. And I think echoing Angela's concern on adequacy, man, that's the topic. That's for our communities. That's what needs to get fixed for sure.
So actually, if it's all right, I want to seize something that you guys were both just talking about a second ago. We're elected officials, as are you, and I think one of the things that the scope of the things that we have focused on are minute in comparison to the scope of things that obviously you've got to work on. I'm sure you're familiar with the program, the Leadership New Hampshire program. So I did that 3 or 4 years ago now, and it's it's a very thinly veiled sort of like conduit to get you into becoming a legislator at some stage. They even have you have lunch with legislators, in a thinly veiled ploy to get you to join. It's a very interesting sort of track that they get you on. It's the idea is to sort of broaden your understanding of the issues that face all communities of New Hampshire in all these different domains. And I think it's an entirely worthwhile sort of curriculum, if you want to call it that. But after exiting that, reflecting on what I learned there in this position here, speaking with legislators, and now speaking with you, I'm sort of wondering, based on that last comment that you had made, that the only way that change gets made is when people are aware. I'm paraphrasing that last part. It's when people bring up sort of the point and are aware that there's a problem, things get fixed. And while I think that there may be some truth to that, it always has me wondering, so how does it change? Where does it change? And who makes the change, right? Okay. So in the scope of the things that we've dealt with here, masks obviously have been a big issue. We sat here a month ago and listened to two sides of an argument who were both trying to raise awareness over their particular aspect of why masks should be worn or why masks shouldn't be worn. And as lawmakers as policymakers, pardon me, we have to sort of figure out what the best policy is to address the concern that is there, in spite of all of this awareness that oftentimes conflicts with one another, okay, right? And so that's small potatoes by comparison to fixing the education funding problem, for instance, okay, right? So what I'm curious about from lawmakers, and since you're a lawmaker who's in front of me, I'm going to ask you this question, rather than raising awareness for it and saying or having people continue to say, yeah, it's a big problem, we've really got to solve this, and it's really inequitable, and it's such a big deal. From your perspective, what is the first step? What is the plan that we could try to actually solve this particular problem?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So particularly the school funding issue, the way that it was tried to everyone come together towards the same solution is that the last budget there was $500,000, which is a lot of money, put in to create the school funding commission to take all the research, do an analysis of student performance and weighing all the factors and come up with recommendations, which they did. It was the school funding commission. It was a bipartisan group of legislators and experts, and they came up with a report, and then the folks in power just tossed it out the window. They didn't listen to it. So, that's not an answer to her question, but that is sometimes a way that issues get solved. But what I was saying to Deb is that nothing ever gets done at the state level or at the State House unless folks are coming to the State House to share how these issues are impacting their community. And so that's what I would empower you all to do is, you have a unique perspective on the school funding issue as, administrators and school board members. And that needs to, that information needs to get to the State House. And I can do that as, their senator, but it's way more powerful for community members to do that. So in New Hampshire, our legislators are very accessible, right? And so I have to say, I was an advocate and a lobbyist for many years, and now being on the other side. And what I know and what I see is that the most powerful testimony is when someone comes to share their story about how something impacts their family, or a local school board member comes and says, we can't put together a budget that we feel comfortable with that's going to raise property taxes but also educate our children. Share that real story. It's incredibly impactful. It really is. And also, that's what the press is going to pick up on, and that makes change also. So civic engagement is easy in New Hampshire in terms of access, and it's incredibly important. I think people feel intimidated to go to Concord to testify, but it is the most impactful thing to make change in New Hampshire, and it works.
So just looking at that committee report, just, very tangibly, would you say that you were very much in favor of, or very much isn't fair, were you in favor of the report that they had put together as a viable solution to the problem?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, rather than, this is maybe just me that sees it this way. I've also testified at the state, and it felt like it was falling on deaf ears. So I'm a little jaded in this particular case, not related to education, related to some healthcare stuff.
And the other thing, Zach, is that you got to vote in the people that you think are going to listen.
Yes, yeah.
And the vote, the voters control who is sitting in those seats.
In particular, not just your senators, because ultimately a lot of the committees that this junk has to make it through are people you don't even care about on the ballot necessarily. necessarily. You just kind of check your name next to them, and that's the one that you're going to be in front of with that committee that actually has to be the one you talk to. And I sort of understand that, but I think the question that I'm still wondering is, like, if that was a good plan,
Yeah.
what's preventing it from actually? I would love to go back and ask this question to the legislature
Sure.
and say, like, so there was a plan. I'm sure there was a reason why it was thrown out other than just politics.
It was a
but-
political issue.
Yeah.
There's this old notion of donor towns. These are our wealthier towns. And there was a political decision that this new commission report was taking us back to donor towns. And the donor towns have a strong sort of lobbying presence, and they have a strong voice in the State House. And it was a political issue.
So is this not a solvable issue then, from your perspective? I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I mean, is it going to be one of these things that is basically not a solvable issue because it is too political?
No, I don't think any issue is intractable, right? I think it's political will, right? I think what this commission proposed is only one possibility. There are so many other ways to solve this issue that we have to be bold to explore.
So did that suggest that instead of budgets being voted locally and things like that, it all went through the Department of Education, that they had the funding and then spread it back? So it took, I mean, the local control, I feel, I work with school districts all over the United States, and I'm really kind of proud of our local control that we have. And I know it makes it tough for some towns, and it goes different, but there's something to be said about the New Hampshire way of life, that there are certain things that we feel strongly about. Let's keep things local, which is why we have so many people in the legislature in New Hampshire, is because we send people, and we've got that. We're trying to do that local control and not having an income tax.
Yeah, the proposal didn't take away local control at all. It just sort of reevaluated the tax structure, frankly, and sort of shifted away from relying on the
Property taxes
exactly.
into what?
It was a real. There wasn't a new tax levied. It wasn't like it was creating an income tax. It just sort of shifted the formula a little bit. It didn't take away local control, though. Yeah.
Unless there's any other questions, thank you again for coming to visit us. I will say this is the first time that we've had somebody in your position visit and talk with us and have a good conversation with us, and I think that is a step obviously in a good direction. And I guess maybe one last little bit here. If any or all of us do wish to approach lawmakers in Concord, I presume that we could reach out to your office and sort of get a good sort of jumping off point for who else we would need to speak with and
Absolutely.
where we would start with that? Okay.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I'll leave some of my cards too.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you all. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay, guys. So let's move on to item number 7, which is student board report. So Bella, do you have something for us this evening?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of talk about our student council with you guys today, how we set it up, who our board members are, some of our plans for the year, just stuff like that, kind of get you guys in the know of what's going on over here. So we've been meeting since the beginning of the school year, 7:30 in the morning, every single Monday. It's one of those things I'm really excited to be a part of, but it's one of those okay.
Not at 7:30 on a Monday.
I'm like,
On a Monday.
we gotta go. I'm like, Dunkin' Donuts, if it's not already my best friend, it really is now. So our student, I'm glad you guys enjoyed that.
Yeah, you got a good crowd over there. That's
Yeah. So our core group of our board members to say consists of 5 people. Caitlin Pinter, who is our vice president for Spirit. Grace Kaplan, who is our vice president for the legislative side of our board. Ruby Dykstra, who is the secretary, and she, I think, also in the school year will be here sitting next to me. I know sports is a big conflict for her right now. Emily Roy is our treasurer, and I am the president because I don't have anything else to do. I want to talk about how we have like a legislative and a spirit side of our, not our school board, that's where I am, I'm sorry, of our student council. The legislative side focuses more on like school processes and change that we made throughout the school. I know that projects taken on in the past have been like more eco-friendly lunches and stuff like that. Spirit, pretty self-explanatory, get the spirit up, get it back at John Stark. Plan student activities, pep rallies, spirit weeks, all that fun jazz. As you guys can probably tell by now, that's my fun. Anytime that I could go in front of the gym and talk in front of the whole school, big yes for me. So hoping we actually get to have those this year. Currently, we're working on some Spirit Week planning, involving like what days we're gonna do, some competitions we're gonna try and get the students involved, since at the moment we can't have everybody crowded in the gym. Pretty self-explanatory. We also want to inform students of like things going on throughout the school and get what's going on in student council more out to other students. A big goal of mine when I was running for president of the council was to get more student involvement than just the same 20 people who give up their Monday mornings, because not everybody wants to do that, and I'm well aware of it. So a big thing that I wanted to do was, like, if a student was very invested in just one project, say we're going back to the eco-friendly lunch trays or whatever it may have been, if a student was very, very passionate about that, I want them to be able to come and work on just that project for the month, 2 months that we work on that project, because I want to try and get as many students involved as possible without making everybody absolutely miserable. We got many new students added in the past few weeks. We kept the same group of people from last year who ran for positions, so they just were automatically back in the council. And we had everybody else reapply. We went through applications. Nobody was rejected, but we wanted to see what people's interests were in the council. And one of the ways to do that was to be like, hey, you have to do this if you want to be in. The last thing that I want to say before I head out is a big thank you to Mr. Dempsey, Mr. Emery, and Dr. Dumont, and all the other administrators for a great start to the year. I know it's been crazy. I felt it myself. But I just really want to thank you guys for what you guys have gotten done for us. And we're pretty much back to normal, which I'm really much enjoying for my senior year, I'd like to say. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really glad that you guys are back in person as well, and that we've been able to navigate this. I should also say, sort of tracking the mask use issue and everything, and sort of rolling with the way in which we've had to make masks mandatory and making them optional again. My understanding is that the student body has been really receptive and really flexible and really handling this very, very well. So we're really glad that everything seems to be working out.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, walking throughout classrooms, I didn't see too many, I will say, people that are like, I'm not putting my mask. I think people were very respectful about what's going on. And even back in the classroom now, I do see a lot of students still continuing to wear masks, whether it's athletes because of sports seasons, whatever it may be, if you just feel more comfortable. I've seen a lot of both sides, and I think it's great. I don't think I've seen anybody like, oh my gosh, you're not wearing a mask, oh my gosh, you're wearing a mask type of deal, which was my big concern when we switched, switched to both, was going to be people going at people either way, and I haven't noticed a lot of it. I've noticed a lot of respect to one another between the students this year as a whole. I don't know if something just happened, but I mean, also, I don't get my nose in whatever the freshmen are doing, so I can't promise anything for them.
It's very likely the fact that everybody just wants to be around each other. I mean, I think that plays a pretty big part of it. Yeah.
It's going really well, and I'd like to thank all you guys for everything you've done to make it go that well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, all right, guys, let's move along then. Let's see.
I just want to say to the students, I'm going to address some of that in my report. So if you want to just wait for my report, then you can go do your homework.
Oh, yeah, don't leave before Mr. Dempsey's report. It's the highlight of the evening.
I apologize on behalf of everyone.
All right, we'll get through curriculum reports real quick, or committee reports real quick, pardon me. So speaking of which curriculum did you meet?
So we have not met yet. We're about to meet. Give you a report on that next time. Community relations, we have not met yet. policy we did, and you'll see the results of that.
Ooh.
Facilities?
Facilities did not meet, I don't believe, did we?
No,
Yeah.
because Chris is out.
So yes, Chris is with child. So
He just had his wife just had a
yes,
baby. He's not.
yes. Wellness committee has not.
I'm going to
met.
set that up.
Okay.
Okay. Transportation. There is no committee meeting that I know that we've had, but I know that we've been working through transportation issues since school began, and I would say that they're under control, but that's probably not true. Oh, okay.
Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think no? Okay, never mind. We're still working through them.
But not at
Mr.
the
Emery
point
can-
that somebody had a complaint and it needed to go to a board committee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Perfect.
could I just ask a question on that? So I know there's been a lot of struggles with that. Yeah, Gary, I never heard back from anyone when I emailed. Right now on the website, the schedules that are posted are the original schedules, which I don't think are valid because of buses that were combined and whatnot. So I have no way of knowing, because my daughter wasn't riding the bus at the beginning of the year, and I'm sure that's the case for some other people. The public right now has no way of knowing what the bus schedules are, so if we could get the correct information or the current information posted,
Here. Yes, I'd appreciate that.
that
Yeah.
would be good.
What we'll probably actually do is just strip them off the website entirely because they're ever changing.
And just piggybacking on that, there are people such as myself who live in extremely rural areas, and there is no longer a bus that comes out and serves our route, if you will. In those circumstances, is there a policy that is already in place for student transportation if they need to get to those rural areas, or is it just not happening?
It would depend on what grade. If you have a high schooler
I have a 7th grader
Okay.
as well. Yeah.
that wants to ride the bus,
Not yet. I've so far been able to manage getting there myself, so that's good. I'm just thinking I'm not the only person that is probably facing this particular issue, even on our street. I know that
Yeah.
there's some younger kids there. So I just want to make sure, because I'm happy to give them rides personally in that area that I can help with, but ultimately it's a different thing for other people, perhaps.
can we follow up after? Because,
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. Okay.
Negotiations, yes, and we'll talk about that. in a
Yes,
little while.
right. And that is that. So, Gary, would you please give us your report?
Yes, thank you. I thought the opening of school went very well, piggybacking on what Bella was saying. Each student received the John Stark T-shirt to symbolize that we're all one family here, and we have a common goal of helping each other achieve their own personal goals. Like Bella said, everyone has the goal of returning to normal, and like I said, I think we're getting closer and closer, and so I appreciate that. Much of my time has been spent dealing with several of the COVID issues. I want to thank the leadership team, Mr. Emery, Dr. Dumont, Dr. Hall, and Mrs. Smith for everything they've done to, support me, because there's been times that I've had to kind of sequester myself and work on some stuff, and I appreciate everything they do. Mrs. Smith is not here tonight because she's recuperating. Today was SAT day, so another amazing job by her and her team. The nurse has done an amazing job juggling everything she's had to do. I'd like to personally welcome Heidi Isley to our John Stark team as a nursing assistant, as well as Stacy Fuller, a new paraprofessional. Things that we're working on that are outlined in the strategic plan, I'm not going to read. They're as submitted. A couple of areas that I'd like to update you on. I'm working on the budget. We're working on Challenge Day and bringing that back. Athletics is finishing up one season, starting another. Homecoming, we originally canceled the dance because of where our numbers were. Then with our numbers decreasing, we published a plan that gave us option, which was well received by the public, especially the students. I actually had some email from students and met with them, because when we returned to mask being optional, they just said, can we just wait until after homecoming, because we want to make sure we have a regular homecoming. So once I explained to him the decision matrix and everything, the students did a great job. It just outlines that the students just really want things to get back to normal. So I'm going to end with a quick story, and this is what I want the students to hear. I've been in education over 30 years. This fall, I had one of the best days I've ever had in my entire career. The day I'm talking about was after the email was sent that would require us to go to targeted masking. I woke up that day and I expected many issues related to this change. But once again, our students of John Stark stepped up, followed the guidelines, and they did it in such a way that really moved me personally. And I just wanted to personally thank the students publicly for everything that they have done. The staff has done an amazing job, but just as equally, our students have done an amazing job, and I just wanted to publicly thank them. And now you can go do your homework if you want. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
This is my thank you on behalf of the students for your thank you.
Now you can go do your homework.
All right,
Okay.
guys. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. All right.
Good night, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Okay. I know we've changed sort of the format of the administrative report here, but do we have some strategic plan updates that we need to share here as well?
I think the ones that we have, I can do as submitted, and
Okay.
I would just echo what Gary said.
Gary's sentiment, fair enough. Okay. Then we've got the manifest, which has required our signature in PandaDoc. Chris is not here to do a reconciliation report with us, but does that mean that somebody from your team will be doing it, Jackie?
Sure, yeah, that would be me.
Okay.
It was in the,
Yeah, it's in the,
unless you want to do as.
man, we're really hosed on the revenue side
No,
here.
it is, we are a little bit higher in our bottom line than last year, but it's running about level.
And it's, I know this is one of those really easy-er ones to do because it's so brand new. Like
Yes.
it's, that's about as much as we would probably wish to know at this stage, which is where it was tracking,
Yes.
by comparison last year. So, any questions, guys, on this? Okie dokie. Then let's move on to the COVID grant funding update, which I don't know that there is much of one. Has anything substantively changed since last month?
There has been little activity since last month.
Understood. Okay. Then let us move along even further. There is nothing under, there is an item under number personnel, although it's not on the agenda here. Is that correct? Is this a nomination that we have to take up?
I think that was done last time. We were
Okay.
waiting, we were
Okay.
holding.
Got it. Okay.
Let me double check that, but.
Sure thing. I can always reassert it in the agenda if we need to. Okay, and then we've got some policy work to do. Hooray, policies.
I'm so excited. All right. If it's okay with you guys, I'll do what I did before, which
Please.
is just summarize. Okay.
Yep.
So policy EBBD is a policy about indoor air quality. So we have not had this policy before. So this is just, frankly, we have to take into consideration the indoor air quality. What does that look like and what are the standards? There's a checklist that the DOE provides us. So this just essentially says, hey, we have to ensure adequate indoor air quality, and this is the checklist we're going to go by, and the superintendent is the one authorized to help us figure out how that's exactly going to work. So, and it's a required policy, and it follows the statute. So all of that being said, I'm going to move that we adopt EBBD waiving further reading.
I will second that.
Further discussion?
Pretty
Okay.
straightforward.
I was gonna say.
I have a question, and I apologize because this is some of what I do.
Yep. No. I'm glad you're bringing it up. Yep.
But I understand that it meets the. It's talking about vehicle emissions, though.
It's part of the statute. It makes us talk about vehicle emissions as well. I know it's
Okay.
weird.
Yeah.
It's the silly statute.
Okay.
And it talks about, like, you're not supposed to have idling cars and all this weird bananas. But that's because the legislature is bananas. And
Yeah.
not to disparage anybody,
it's-
but they put a bunch of things together in this one.
Because, we're not talking about, building, what building materials we're choosing. We're not talking about what chemicals we're using in the building necessarily. We're not talking about air exchanges.
Part of that is in the checklist, though. Can I safely say that? Is the checklist deals with what the air quality needs to look like, what the testing is, what the air exchange is. The checklist deals with that. from the
Okay.
DOE.
And
Which
that's
is why we
what's
didn't make
number,
this
the second paragraph is about, right? In addition to addressing the methods for eliminating emissions,
Which is
building
weird.
principles.
Yeah, just like.
Investigate
using a
air
checklist
quality.
By DOE,
It's-
so it's.
Yeah,
kinda-
that's the place. Well, we do get inspected on that and have to report that back. And so, of course, they tie it to everything we do, right? If you don't pass this, then you don't get that.
Right, right. I mean, I know some of our policies are kind of,
It's a little on the vague side, but at the same time, if we, one of our other districts had a, what was that, the standards?
The ASHRAE.
Yeah, those. Had those standards in it, but then again, we weren't, those aren't the standards that we're required. We meet different ones to pass our,
Is that the one I wrote years ago? Oh, okay. Right.
to pass for the DOE.
okay,
Anyway, I know it's a little weird, but.
okay. I just, I couldn't help myself.
No, hey, fair enough, right? That's part of what we're doing.
Okay, so thanks for asking that. Unless there's any other further questions, all in favor of adopting policy EBBD, waiving further reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you kindly. EEAEA.
Okay, so on this one,
Please.
this is going to be really shocking. State and federal statute, of course, mandates that there is mandatory drug and alcohol testing for school bus drivers and contracted carriers. So we know that this is a required policy. We do this already, so this isn't something that's out of the blue or that we're not doing, but we have to have a policy that talks about, that tracks the statute. So this policy is very simple. These are who we're testing. This is how it works. I don't know that there's a whole lot to be said about this other than, yes, there's mandatory drug and alcohol testing for these folks, governed by, as you can see at the bottom, a boatload of statutes, both state and federal. So I will move that we adopt EEAEA, waiving further reading.
I will second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on policy EEAEA? IOU?
One more question, or one question on this. We don't have the bus anymore, right? The little van bus thing?
We have a different van
Okay.
out front now than the,
Not 16 or more.
right.
So that's not part of this, though? Okay.
Correct.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify that that's a different
Yeah.
vehicle type in the whole
Yeah, different.
CDL.
Yeah, it's not the
different-
CDL requirement, right.
Okay.
Okay. Further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor of adopting EEAEA, waiving further reading, please signify by saying aye.
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 All right. The next one is JLCJA. This is a policy, and the next thing is a related procedure that goes along with this. Again, it's a required policy, and it talks about what is our emergency plan for sport-related injuries. So this is a little bit newer on the books, talking about you need to have a plan and who's going to be in charge of the plan. So typically, as with most statutes, the superintendent is, or his or her designee is going to establish this plan. So that's why our policy then says this. And it talks about what is needed in the plan. So what happens in an emergency, who's in charge of that, where's our equipment located, so on and so forth, similar to the emergency plans that we have in place for other things. And it'll be looked at on a yearly basis. And in conjunction with this, let me go to the procedure. So this is the how-to, right? These are some of the things that are required, and this is, again, the statute that came into effect on this relates to this, and this was really a very reactionary kind of statute. It came into play because there were some, nationally, there were some extraordinary heat-related injuries. So you see the football players, some of those things you saw in the news, that's really where this kind of was born out of. There's maybe a term that I hadn't really paid attention to this or been familiar with it before, wet globe temperature. You're essentially talking about how heat and humidity are playing and what does that look like and how impactful that is on the athletes as they are practicing or playing. So we're going to have protocols related to that. We're going to look at history and return to play and what does that look like. So the procedure that additional protocols for what goes with the policy are there under that same policy designation with a P at the end. So I am going to move that we adopt JLCJA and its associated procedure waiving further reading.
I will second that.
Okay, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting policy JLCJA without further review or second reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Nope. And let's handle the protocols now.
So
Or is it-
I'll move that we adopt those protocols.
He moved that we,
I
you
did
moved
add
that
it
we
to
did
that.
it together.
You did,
right?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Yep, so
Yep.
then we'll move on to policy IHAM.
All right, IHAM. Here we go. Health education and exemption from instruction. This is one of those opt-outs that folks need to have a couple of weeks advance notice. We've had this policy in place since 2013. There's a small change in the statute. Jackie, what was that statutory change? I know I can't.
It was just this specific 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, I thought it might have been, but there was a lot of policy work. So anyway, so it just says that there's the notice provision is 2 weeks, not less than 2 weeks for those topics. This was already here. We've already had that. It's just a matter of giving a little bit of specificity on the notice. So I'll move that we adopt IHAM, waiving further reading.
I will second that.
Okay, any further discussion, guys? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of adopting policy IHAM, waiving further reading, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nobody's opposed? I think we should have a policy to make sure that we don't have policy names that are made completely of vowels.
Yeah,
At least one consonant has to be in there.
I'm all right with that. That's a pain.
Okay. That completes or concludes our policy work. Thank you. There is nothing under item 12, which is old business. There are a few items under item 13, which have to do with first ratification of the MOU with the John Stark Teachers Association, which I think is in our folder here. Pardon me, I've just been kicked offline here. Maybe I'm back? Now I'm back. We had a very productive meeting with the Teachers Association. Actually, I got a handful of meetings to address this and other things. You'll note that this is, I believe, a far briefer version than the MOU than we had seen in prior years. Virtually all of the language regarding remote instruction has been removed. It is essentially just reestablishing or reaffirming some of the safety protocols that are in place. As well as item 6, which you'll see about sort of a compensation rate for substitute teaching during the pandemic here. Okay? Unless there's any questions with this. We don't need, this has already been, do we actually need to ratify this as a board, or is this something that has been?
It's already been signed.
That's what I assumed. Yeah, okay, got it. Okay.
Cool.
So that's that. The October 1st enrollment numbers, which I believe are in here as well. Do we need to go through that conversation, or is it pretty self-explanatory? And do we just want to open to questions?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lower number than October 1 last year. Gary's done a little bit of research into that and could talk to that a bit more if you're interested.
It's a pretty, it's more than just a little bit. It's
Yes,
620 to 587, right? So what is the reason for that based on what you've seen, Gary?
So we've had a lot of people actually move out. We've had, in the past year, we've had 44 people move out of our district. That's moved out into New Hampshire, and we had another additional about 10 move out of state. So that's, about, the exact number is, quick math, 54, right? Yeah. So we had a number of move-outs. You know, we're doing a deeper dive into figure out. We did have some homeschools, so those are the issues. And it's hard to really quantify why that is. You know, is it COVID related, or is it just people are moving, you know, into other districts? I don't know, but that's kind of those are the numbers right now.
Last year's senior class had 35 more students than last year's junior class already. So there was, I think, already
Right.
expected to be a drop in that
Right.
year.
And so, and we did have, I'm just trying to find my report here. And we did have some, you know, some people move in, but not as much as it has been expected. So I think that's, and again, I'm kind of doing a deeper dive into those numbers to figure out the reason. I'm working with Natasha on that. We're coming up with, so more information on that to come, but that's just my quick analysis that I did the other day.
And there appear to be some bigger classes coming from both Henniker and Ware. The current 7th grade in both schools is enormous,
Right.
actually, right?
Bring them on.
Well, and so just to clarify, Gary, the move-outs, you know that because we've got a request for a transfer of records. So it's in addition to homeschooling, which we have a slight uptick that didn't explain the drop.
Yeah.
And so we have confirmed transfers.
Wow, okay. All right. Yeah, definitely need to keep our eye on that one, so, okay. Although, yeah, I think next year we're losing a class of 114, and that, I think, single-handedly will be replaced by just the Ware students from the 8th grade.
Right.
So this is there's just a couple of there's a particularly small senior class this year, isn't there? Okay.
And it got noticeably smaller. Like,
Yeah.
that was a number that sort of
Yeah.
stood out to me when I looked at this. I just didn't, I'll be curious to see what the analyses, you know, show. Whether there's any particular reason why the senior class is so small.
Yeah, that class alone lost 20 students over the course of last year,
Right.
from what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
I can explain a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So the way that the report is done is based on credits. So we do have some seniors who maybe are credit deficient and will graduate this year, but are not identified as seniors right now. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that number is most likely going to be higher than that.
But still,
Then you rob.
I mean, this
Right.
would be the same, I mean, we're comparing apples to apples here. So at this time last year, the senior class last year was 170. And even the junior class was 135. So it's still, last year you would have had the same thing where there'd be people that were credit deficient.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Unless there's any other questions, guys. Let's move along. Last item is an FYI about our next board meeting, which is on the SAU board meeting, which is on the 25th.
And that's going to be at Henniker Community School in the cafeteria.
Okay, thank you.
Please show up.
Gotta put it in my calendar now.
We seem to be missing a public, so there is no public comment for us to have. And then board member reports and proposals for future agenda items. Can we just make sure that the Washington, D.C. thing shows up there in that bulleted list?
And can I ask for clarification about that? Like,
Yeah, sure, yeah.
what are you looking for?
So there are a number of parents whose students didn't get to go in their 8th grade year the last 2 years. And so some of the suggestions were maybe doing it right after school started, so that way, school ended. So that way it would be less likely to be canceled if it happened in late June.
Yeah.
Something like that, but sort of organizing it through the school so that way people, if there's a potential for it, could get started on fundraising and things like that. Even if it's parents sort of organizing it and running it, something, because those kids miss that opportunity to do that. And so there's a lot of things they missed out on, and it's a real good education opportunity for kids to go.
Okay. I think we were, at least when I remember the conversation, it was, we were handling it as we were planning trips in the future. We're not really planning anything for trips right now. So I had seen it as part of that conversation when we start
Gotcha.
planning those trips.
Fair enough. I texted Jill about it, I think yesterday even, just, I have heard about parents that are thinking about just doing this as like a private trip for some students and for their own students namely, and then for other students as well. And knowing that we had sort of wondered about this during board meeting, it sort of goes against I think the original intention of that, and it's typically been a middle school thing, certainly not a high school thing, but there's 2 entire classes of now sophomore and freshman that have sort of had a hole in that kind of important civics aspect of their 8th grade year. And we may do nothing about it, we may not want to do anything about it, and that's totally like fine, we can have that conversation, but maybe that's the jumping off point is, it doesn't maybe even have to happen this year if we're not planning for it, but if we intend to do that for what will be 3 classes worth by the time, the current 8th grade class arrives, is that something that we would consider doing in one fell swoop with all of those students as I don't want to say a make good for that, because I think it comes down in 2 domains. There's certainly the rite of passage thing, which is undeniable. Let's not pretend like that's not part of it.
Yeah.
But then it is the civics part that I think that we want to make sure that if the sending schools couldn't get to it, that we do that. Like that's a thing that we own up to.
I have 2 thoughts on that. One, bringing kids to DC is I'm a social studies teacher, is one of my favorite things to do.
Yes, I imagine, yeah.
And so there is a tremendous value. I'm a little, and I felt like what you described was where we had left the conversation, and as we started planning future trips, I'm a little concerned about bandwidth.
Yeah. Yes.
And that's it's a big ask. It could just
Totally
being
get it.
totally transparent.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we'll have anything for next meeting to present. We're just not there.
That's totally, that's fair. I understand.
Yeah.
And that's,
Okay.
I think that's really all there is to it, because we will probably have that there are some parents that go and do that, and we can't control all that stuff. That's totally fine. We just want to make sure that we've got like the route to us doing this would be equivalent to a trip to Montreal or a trip to a foreign country or New York City or something along those lines. And it's not in the cards right now, is what we're hearing.
Might not be.
Might not be in the cards.
Yes.
And I will just let you know, as far as our leadership, I just want to echo what Jackie said. Right now is not the bandwidth, but it is on our, we have talked about it.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, we need a non-public session, it sounds like.
Very brief.
Very brief.
Yes.
Okay, followed by a non-meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, but followed by coming out, doing items 16, 17, and 18, and then doing our non-meeting. So, okay, fair enough.
Zach, can I just say one more thing before?
Yes.
The technology has been a challenge this year.
Yes.
And I just want, Steve, I know, is in the room. Everything that he'd had to do to keep us up and running, I just wanted to publicly thank him for all that work, Chromebooks and everything.
Thank you.
Spin the camera to yourself, man. Like
He's going now.
So
We appreciate
as
you.
far, not there. I think the request is in your board drive, and so if there's not a need for a conversation, it's pretty self-explanatory. I hope it's in there.
Sorry.
I don't see anything.
Is there a folder that is supposed to be the non-public folder in each of these individual folders? Jackie, I know we've done it before, but I can't remember what the pattern was for doing it.
I don't see anything.
Okay, we'll just
Didn't
go
see
into
it.
non-public.
Okay, fair enough. So I will entertain a motion for us to enter non-public pursuant to the RSA that says we can do that.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, so now that's been moved and seconded, I have to take a roll call vote. So Jim, what say you about entering non-public?
Yes.
Angela?
Yes.
Deb?
Yep.
Zachary is a yes.
Yes.
And Jill is a yes. So we are now officially in non-public.
Cool.
We are now officially in non-public. Okay, we are now back from non-public, so I will take a motion pertaining to the request.
So I'll move that we approve the request made in non-public.
I will second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the request made in non-public signify by saying aye, please.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Nope. Okay, our next meeting date is November 10th, here at 6:30. I presume we'll be doing it here with the cameras as we have been doing, is that correct? Okay, very good. And then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will second it.
Okay, Deb moves. Jill seconds. Any further discussion? Probably not. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.